fellow wanderers of Middle-earth, gather close as we venture into the gentle aftermath of great deeds, where heroes discover that the most precious victories are often the quietest ones. Tonight we follow Frodo Baggins as he learns what it means to wake each morning without the weight of saving the world pressing upon his shoulders, finding in ordinary moments the extraordinary peace that makes all struggles worthwhile. The first sensation that greets him each dawn is silence. Not the oppressive quiet of empty wastelands or the tense hush that precedes danger, but the rich, living silence of home where familiar sounds weave together into comfort. The grandfather clock in the hallway marks time with gentle authority, its steady rhythm speaking of continuity rather than urgency. Outside his bedroom window, birds conduct their morning conversations with the unhurried pleasure of creatures who have nowhere more important to be. Sunlight filters through curtains that hang in peaceful folds, creating patterns on the wooden floor that shift slowly as the earth turns toward day. These beams carry no need for haste, no pressing appointments or desperate journeys. They simply exist, warming everything they touch with the patient generosity that characterizes mornings when time belongs entirely to the person experiencing it. The luxury of lying still while consciousness settles into wakefulness proves more precious than any treasure from distant lands. Frodo's body has learned to trust rest again, muscles releasing tensions that once seemed permanent, breath flowing easily through lungs that remember how to draw air without fear. The bed beneath him feels solid and welcoming, its familiarity a daily gift after years of sleeping on hard ground, with one ear always alert for approaching danger. His hands, when he finally stretches them above his head, show the small scars that speak of great deeds without requiring constant remembrance. The finger that once bore a burden too heavy for any mortal being now simply belongs to him again, useful for turning pages and tying bootlaces and all the thousand small tasks that make up peaceful living. The ache that sometimes visits on damp mornings serves as reminder rather than torment, a gentle acknowledgement of what was endured and overcome. The smell of tea brewing in the kitchen below reaches him through floorboards that creak with homely music as Sam moves about preparing breakfast. Even after returning to his own family and responsibilities, Sam still appears most mornings with the faithful persistence that sustained them both through their darkest hours. His presence fills Bag End with warmth that has nothing to do with the kitchen fire, the comfort of friendship that requires no words or formal acknowledgement. Rising finally from bed feels like a choice rather than necessity, movement motivated by anticipation rather than duty. The floor beneath his bare feet holds the coolness of earth that has never known the taint of Mordor's shadow. Wood that grew in peace and was crafted with love into shelter for those who value quiet joy over grand adventure. The ritual of dressing proceeds without haste, each garment chosen for comfort rather than protection. Clean linen against skin that has known too much dirt and blood. Wool soft enough to wrap around shoulders that once carried weight beyond their strength. His clothes speak of abundance and care, of a world where the greatest concern involves choosing between the brown waistcoat and the green one. Walking down the familiar hallway toward kitchen and companionship, Frodo carries within his heart the profound gratitude that comes from understanding how precious ordinary mornings can be. The kitchen windows frame a view that draws Frodo's attention even before he greets. Sam's cheerful bustle around the breakfast preparations. Beyond the glass lies the garden that has become his sanctuary. Rows of vegetables and herbs arranged with the careful artistry of someone who has learned to find profound satisfaction in the act of nurturing growth. The early morning light reveals plants heavy with dew, their leaves catching droplets that transform the ordinary plot into something jeweled and magical. After breaking his fast with Sam and sharing the gentle conversation that marks the beginning of each day, Frodo makes his way into the garden with the anticipation of someone approaching beloved work. The soil beneath his knees as he settles beside the tomato plants feels rich and forgiving, dark earth that speaks of countless seasons of patient cultivation. His hands sink into dirt that holds no memory of ash or shadow, only the accumulated wisdom of growth and decay, cycling endlessly toward abundance. The seeds he plants carry within them promises that extend far beyond their small size. Each one represents faith in futures he may never see. Trust that careful tending in the present will yield harvests that nourish both body and spirit. The act of covering them with soil becomes a meditation on hope itself. The understanding that some forms of wealth can only be created through patient investment in processes larger than individual desire. Weeding transforms from mundane chore into contemplative practice as Frodo learns to distinguish between plants that belong and those that steal nourishment from intended growth. His fingers develop the sensitivity to recognize welcome seedlings by touch alone, while his eyes gain skill at spotting invasive growth before it establishes deep roots. The parallel to his own healing process never escapes him. This daily practice of removing what hinders flourishing while protecting what serves life. The rhythm of garden work creates its own form of prayer, repetitive motions that free his mind to wander through memories without being overwhelmed by their weight. Watering becomes ritual as he moves between rows with measured steps, offering each plant exactly what it needs, while finding in their quiet response a form of gratitude that requires no words. The simple miracle of seeds becoming food never loses its capacity to inspire wonder at the underlying generosity that governs creation. Hours pass without his notice as concentration narrows to the immediate task of encouraging life to flourish under his care. The sun climbs higher while his hands work steadily through soil that grows warm beneath the strengthening light. Sweat gathers on his forehead with the honest satisfaction that comes from physical labor, chosen freely rather than imposed by necessity. When hunger finally calls him back toward the house, dirt clings to his hands and knees with the comfortable evidence of productive work. The garden stretches behind him, showing the subtle improvements that accumulate through daily attention, plants standing straighter, soil lying more evenly, pathways cleared of obstacles that might impede growth. Washing his hands at the kitchen pump, Frodo watches brown water swirl away while clean skin emerges beneath. Yet something of the garden's peace remains embedded in his spirit. The afternoon stretches ahead with promise of reading and correspondence, but the morning's work in soil and sunlight has already provided the foundation of contentment that will flavor every remaining hour of this blessed, ordinary day. The afternoon finds Frodo settled in his favorite armchair beside the sitting room fire. A book open in his lap, though his eyes have drifted from the printed words to focus on middle distance where Thoughts take shape without invitation. These moments arrive regularly now, gentle visitations from a past that no longer demands active struggle, but still seeks acknowledgement and understanding through the lens of hard-won peace. The memories that surface during these quiet hours carry different weight than they once did, where former recollections brought sharp edges of fear and desperate urgency. These reflections arrive wrapped in the soft certainty of survival and completion. The terror that once accompanied thoughts of Mordor's wastes and the eye-searching malice has transformed into something more manageable. Grief for what was endured, balanced by gratitude for what was preserved. His mind drifts to moments of desperation when hope seemed nothing more than cruel delusion. When each step forward required effort that felt beyond his capacity to sustain. The marshes where dead faces stared up through black water. The stairs carved into cliffs that scraped knees and palms raw. The final crawl across plains where every breath tasted of ash and defeat. Yet viewing these experiences from the comfort of his chair beside a warm fire, their meaning shifts from torment toward testimony. The courage that carried him through those darkest hours reveals itself as something both more and less than he had imagined while living through them. More, because the act of continuing when continuation seemed impossible required strength that only emerges through the choice to place others' welfare above personal comfort. Less, because that strength proved more fragile and human than legends would suggest. Sustained by friendship rather than individual heroism, by small kindnesses rather than grand gestures. Sam's presence throughout those trials takes on deeper significance during these peaceful afternoons of reflection. The loyalty that never wavered. The practical wisdom that solved immediate problems while grander minds wrestled with cosmic implications. The stubborn refusal to abandon what mattered most even when victory appeared impossible. Memory transforms his gardener's simple devotion into something approaching sacred. Love made manifest through countless acts of service that asked nothing in return. The ring itself, that burden which nearly destroyed everything good within him, emerges in memory as teacher as much as torment. Its whispered promises of power and significance reveal truths about the corruption that waits within every heart. The seductive logic that transforms protection into domination, preservation into possession. Understanding how close he came to claiming it for himself brings not shame but deeper appreciation for the mercy that preserved him from his own weakness. Even Gollum's tormented presence gains different meaning when viewed through the clarity that distance provides. The creature's pitiful obsession and ultimate treachery served purposes larger than his own conscious intention, becoming instrument of providence in ways that planning could never have achieved. Compassion for his suffering mingles with recognition of how easily any bearer might have followed similar paths toward destruction. The wound that throbs occasionally on dark nights or dreary mornings no longer speaks only of loss and limitation. Instead, it serves as a reminder of prices willingly paid, of choices made when the cost was known and accepted anyway. The pain becomes badge of honor rather than source of resentment. Proof that some things matter enough to justify any sacrifice required for their preservation. As afternoon light fades toward evening and the fire settles into glowing embers, Frodo closes his book with the satisfaction of someone who has used solitude well. The memories that visited him today return to their resting places, processed and integrated into the growing peace that makes each ordinary evening feel like victory over forces that once threatened to destroy everything worth defending. The evening mail arrives with the gentle ceremony that has come to mark the most anticipated moments of Frodo's quiet days. Sam's eldest daughter appears at the green door of Bag End with letters clutched carefully in hands, still small enough to make the simple envelopes seem precious beyond measure. Her shy smile and careful curtsy speak of the reverence that even the youngest hobbits feel toward the returned hero, though Frodo himself has worked hard to discourage such formality in favor of the comfortable familiarity that makes the Shire feel like home. Tonight's correspondence brings the usual treasures that connect him to lives unfolding beyond his peaceful retreat. Sam's letter arrives, written in the careful hand of someone still amazed by his own literacy. Each word chosen with the deliberation of a craftsman selecting tools for important work. The pages carry news of his growing family, his expanding responsibilities as mayor, the small triumphs and ordinary concerns that make up the daily reality of someone building a life worth living. The joy that radiates from Sam's descriptions of his children's first words and hesitant steps proves more warming than any fire could provide. His accounts of town meetings where neighbors argue about road repairs and market schedules with the passionate intensity they once reserved for matters of life and death bring gentle laughter that speaks of a world successfully restored to proper proportions. Even his complaints about the paperwork that accompanies civic responsibility carry undertones of pride in being trusted with such authority. Mary's letter arrives from Buckland bearing the confident script of someone who has discovered unexpected talent for leadership and administration. His descriptions of restoring order to lands once disrupted by ruffians and scoundrels reveal how the courage learned during desperate adventures translates into patience for the slower work of building sustainable prosperity. The diplomatic skills he developed while serving kings now prove equally valuable. When mediating disputes between farmers and coordinating efforts to repair damaged infrastructure, between lines that detail practical accomplishments, Mary's correspondence reveals deeper transformations wrought by their shared experiences. The young hobbit, who once sought adventure for its own sake, now understands that true satisfaction comes through service to something larger than personal desire. His enthusiasm for the mundane responsibilities of governance speaks to wisdom earned through witnessing what happens when good people abandon their duty to preserve what matters most. Pippin's letter bursts with the irrepressible energy that no amount of responsibility seems capable of dampening entirely. His accounts of life in Tookland blend reports of successful harvests with tales of minor mishaps that somehow always resolve themselves through generous applications of good humor and creative problem solving. Even his descriptions of formal dinners and ceremonial duties carry the lightness that makes him beloved by everyone who encounters his irrepressible optimism. Yet beneath Pippin's characteristic levity runs deeper current of gratitude and understanding that speaks to how profoundly their shared trials affected even the most resilient spirit. His casual mentions of nightmares that visit less frequently now, of moments when distant thunder makes him reach instinctively for weapons no longer needed, reveal wounds that heal slowly but surely through the patient medicine of ordinary days, filled with people who matter. The ritual of reading and rereading these precious communications extends the pleasure through careful attention to details that might otherwise pass unnoticed. Each letter becomes a window into lives that continue unfolding according to patterns of growth and change. Friendship that survives separation through conscious effort to remain present in each other's daily experience, despite the distance that now divides their paths. Folding the letters carefully for placement in the wooden box where he keeps all such treasures, Frodo carries into sleep the warmth that comes from knowing that love endures beyond great deeds, that the bonds forged in darkness prove equally strong when tested by the gentle challenges of peace. The morning walks that have become essential to Frodo's daily rhythm carry him along lanes that tell the ongoing story of his homeland's recovery from wounds that once seemed beyond mending, where Saruman's ruffians left scars upon the gentle landscape. Patient hobbit hands have worked steadily to restore beauty that speaks of love for place, deeper than any temporary violation could destroy. Each day brings visible evidence of the resilience that flows through his people like sap through trees. Quiet determination that transforms devastation into opportunity for renewal. The great oak that fell to spite rather than necessity near the Bywater Bridge has become nurse log for a grove of saplings planted by children too young to remember the darkness, but old enough to understand the importance of growing things toward light. Frodo pauses often beside these tender shoots, watching their progress with the satisfaction of someone who knows that healing requires both time and faith in futures that may unfold beyond individual witness. The mill that suffered deliberate destruction during the ruffian's reign of petty tyranny has been rebuilt with improvements that speak to wisdom earned through loss. The new water wheel turns with smoother efficiency, while the grinding stones produce flour finer than any the Shire has known in generations. Sam's influence shows clearly in the design. Practical innovations balanced with respect for traditions that served well before being interrupted by malice. Walking through neighborhoods where houses once stood empty or damaged beyond immediate repair, Frodo finds streets bustling with the purposeful activity of people reclaiming their heritage. Roofs shine with new thatch, while gardens overflow with vegetables planted in soil carefully cleansed of the bitterness that occupation had introduced. Children play games in yards where fear once imposed silence, their laughter echoing off walls rebuilt with stones that remember only kindness. His own participation in this renewal takes forms both large and small. Contributions that draw upon resources accumulated during his years of wandering and adventure. The modest wealth that remains from his inheritance serves practical purposes as he quietly funds repairs that might otherwise strain family budgets already stretched by recovery efforts. His assistance comes without fanfare or expectation of recognition. Gifts offered in the spirit of someone grateful for the privilege of helping home heal. The satisfaction he discovers in physical labor proves deeper than any treasure gained through distant quests. Carrying stones for foundation work, holding timbers steady while neighbors secure them with well-placed nails, mixing mortar with the proper consistency for lasting construction. His hands, once soft with gentle living before being hardened by necessity and suffering, now find their strength through voluntary service to purposes that ask nothing heroic yet matter deeply to everyone involved. The meetings where plans take shape for larger projects reveal how thoroughly his people have absorbed lessons about the importance of self-governance and mutual responsibility. Voices that once deferred to any authority now speak with confidence, earned through discovering their own capacity for wisdom and leadership. Decisions emerge through patient discussion rather than imposed decree. Consensus built through genuine respect for different perspectives and shared commitment to common welfare. Evening gatherings in restored common rooms carry warmth that transcends. Physical comfort provided by well-built fires and sturdy walls. The conversations that flow around tables made smooth by generations of use speak to bonds strengthened rather than weakened by shared trials. Community deepened through collective memory of what was nearly lost and conscious gratitude for what has been preserved. As autumn arrives with its promise of harvest abundance that will sustain the Shire through another winter of peace, Frodo takes quiet satisfaction in knowing that his homeland has not merely survived its ordeal, but grown stronger through the process of recovery, more beautiful for having been consciously tended back to health. The simple act of preparing tea becomes meditation when performed without urgency or fear of interruption. Frodo finds himself standing longer than necessary beside the kettle as water heats to the perfect temperature, listening to the gentle progression of sounds that speak of comfort in preparation. The quiet bubbling that builds toward readiness carries promise of warmth and satisfaction earned through patient waiting rather than desperate need. Selecting leaves from the canister Sam keeps filled with the finest varieties available in Hobbiton brings its own form of contemplation. Each blend carries memories of peaceful afternoons and friendly conversations. Associations built through repetition of ritual that asks nothing more than presence and appreciation. The fragrance that rises when hot water meets carefully measured tea speaks of abundance that extends far beyond the simple cup being prepared. The first sip delivers more than mere refreshment, carrying within its warmth the accumulated satisfaction of countless mornings when such pleasure seemed impossible to imagine. During the darkest days of his journey, when water tasted of desperation and each swallow required conscious effort, the memory of perfect tea served as beacon toward a future that might contain such luxuries again. Now that future has become present reality, made more precious by intimate knowledge of what existence feels like without such simple grace. Meals, too, have transformed from mere necessity into celebration of abundance that feels miraculous despite its ordinariness. The bread that appears fresh each morning from Sam's kitchen carries within its golden crust the patient alchemy that transforms grain into sustenance. Butter spreads smooth and rich across surfaces still warm from the oven, its taste carrying hints of meadows where contented cows graze beneath skies that know no shadow. The pipe that has become his evening companion offers pleasures that extend far beyond the mild narcotic effect of well-cured tobacco. The ritual of cleaning and filling the bowl, the careful application of flame to dried leaves, the first drawer that fills his mouth with smoke flavored by earth and air and patient curing. Each element contributes to satisfaction that builds slowly through conscious attention, rather than hasty consumption. Reading, once pursued for information or escape, now serves as pure pleasure that requires no justification beyond the joy found in well-crafted sentences and carefully developed thoughts. The books that line his study walls offer endless variety of worlds to explore without leaving the comfort of his favorite chair. Stories unfold at the pace his attention chooses to grant them. Characters develop through hours that belong entirely to contemplation rather than urgent advancement toward necessary conclusion. The very sensation of clean clothes against skin that has known too much dirt and discomfort becomes daily reminder of how far he has traveled from desperate circumstances toward genuine peace. Linen that carries the fresh scent of air drying speaks of labor performed by hands that work from love rather than compulsion. Wool that holds warmth without weight wraps around shoulders that remember what it feels like to shiver helplessly in garments inadequate for protection. Even sleep, when it comes naturally rather than as collapse from exhaustion, carries pleasures that reveal themselves through contrast with nights spent lying wakeful on hard ground, while danger prowled the darkness beyond inadequate fire. His bed receives him each evening like embrace from comfort itself. Mattress and pillow and blanket conspiring to create sanctuary, where dreams can unfold without fear of interruption by hostile forces. These simple luxuries accumulate throughout each day like coins deposited in an account that grows richer through appreciation rather than acquisition. Wealth measured not in quantity, but in the capacity to recognize abundance that surrounds anyone willing to notice. How much grace flows through ordinary moments when peace allows such recognition to flourish. The writing desk that once belonged to Bilbo sits beside the study window, where afternoon light streams through glass polished to crystal clarity. Frodo has taken to spending hours at this familiar piece of furniture, his hand moving steadily across pages that will preserve memories too. Important to trust entirely to the fragile vessel of individual recollection. The leather-bound journal grows thicker with each passing week, its pages filling with careful script that transforms chaotic experience into ordered narrative. The act of finding words for events that seemed to transcend language proves more challenging than any physical ordeal he endured. During his journey beyond the borders of ordinary existence, how does mere ink convey the weight of standing in places where hope itself seemed to have died? What combination of letters can capture the sensation of carrying burdens so heavy it threatened to crush not just body but spirit? The inadequacy of vocabulary becomes daily struggle that teaches him patience with the gap between experience and expression. Yet slowly, through persistent effort that mirrors the gradual healing of wounds, both visible and hidden, the story begins to take shape beneath his pen. Each completed page represents victory over the silence that threatens to swallow memories too painful for casual recollection. Triumph of conscious choice to speak truth, rather than allow suffering to remain unwitnessed. The words may prove insufficient to convey full reality, but they serve as bridges that others might cross toward understanding. The discipline required for accurate recording proves surprisingly therapeutic, demanding attention to detail that prevents him from becoming lost in overwhelming emotion, while reliving events that once threatened his sanity. Describing Sam's loyalty requires focus on specific actions rather than abstract gratitude, while recounting moments of despair means examining exactly what thoughts led toward darkness and what factors enabled recovery. The process transforms trauma into narrative, chaos into sequence that can be followed and comprehended. Certain passages flow easily from pen to paper, as if words had been waiting years for release from the prison of unexpressed memory. Sam's courage during their final approach to Mount Doom, Galadriel's terrible beauty when offered power beyond imagining, Aragorn's transformation from weathered ranger into king worthy of ancient throne, These scenes write themselves with clarity that suggests some experiences burn so brightly into consciousness that time cannot dim their essential details. Other episodes require multiple attempts before achieving even approximate accuracy. Events so strange or profound that ordinary language seems inadequate for their description. The moment when he first perceived the ring's true nature, the sensation of existing simultaneously in multiple worlds while wearing the cursed band. The final confrontation with forces that embodied negation itself. These passages demand invention of new approaches to familiar words, combinations that might hint at truths beyond normal communication. The responsibility he feels toward future readers adds weight to every sentence. Knowledge that his account may represent the only reliable record of events that shaped the fate of all Middle-earth. Children not yet born will someday seek understanding of why their world remains free from shadow. And his words must serve as faithful witness to sacrifices made by countless individuals whose names history might otherwise forget. The red binding that will eventually contain these accumulated pages already shows where from handling, evidence of how often he returns to earlier sections for revision and refinement. Each reading reveals new aspects of events that seemed fully understood. Fresh insights that emerge only through the patient work of transforming memory into permanent form that can survive beyond the brief span of any individual life. The window beside his writing desk frames a view that changes with the slow majesty of seasons turning according to rhythms older than memory. Each transformation bringing its own gifts of beauty and meaning to days no longer measured by urgent necessity. Frodo has learned to mark time not by the completion of desperate missions or the approach of terrible deadlines, but by the gentle progression of natural cycles that speak to deeper truths about patience, renewal, and the wisdom found in accepting change as life's fundamental characteristic. Spring arrives with the tender green of new growth, pushing through earth still cold from winter's long embrace. The garden responds to lengthening days with enthusiasm that mirrors his own growing capacity for joy in simple anticipation. Each morning brings new evidence of life returning to landscapes that seemed dormant. Shoots emerging from soil with the confident persistence that characterizes hope when it operates free from doubt or desperate urgency. The work that spring demands feels entirely different from the labors that once consumed his strength and attention. Preparing beds for planting, clearing pathways of winter's accumulated debris, pruning fruit trees back to healthy growth require effort that serves creation rather than destruction. His hands grow dirty with soil that nourishes rather than stains, sweat that flows from choice rather than compulsion. Summer's arrival brings abundance that still amazes him with its generous excess, vegetables growing faster than even the heartiest appetite can consume them. The satisfaction of sharing surplus with neighbors creates networks of reciprocity that strengthen community bonds while ensuring nothing valuable goes to waste. Preserving food for winter months becomes celebration rather than anxious preparation. Confidence in provision that extends beyond immediate season. The long evenings of summer offer hours of peaceful contemplation when twilight stretches into night with reluctance that speaks to the season's own pleasure in lingering rather than hurrying toward conclusion. Sitting outside with his pipe while stars emerge one by one against darkening sky, Frodo experiences time as luxury rather than enemy. Moments that exist for their own sake rather than as stepping stones toward distant goals. Autumn transforms the Shire into tapestry of colors that speak to beauty found in letting go. Leaves releasing their hold on branches with the graceful acceptance that characterizes wisdom about natural endings. The harvest season brings satisfaction deeper than any treasure gained through adventure. Food gathered through patient tending rather than desperate scavenging. Abundance earned through seasonal rhythm rather than taken through force or cunning. The preparation for winter becomes ritual of gratitude rather than anxious hoarding. Preserves and stores accumulated with confidence, born from understanding natural cycles rather than fear of inadequate provision. Wood stacked beside the hearth speaks to warmth that will sustain comfort through cold months. Fuel gathered during pleasant weather for use when harsh conditions make outdoor work impossible. Winter's arrival brings its own gifts of enforced rest and inward turning. Seasons when reading and writing claim more hours, while physical labor yields to contemplative pursuits that nourish spirit as carefully as autumn's harvest nourished body. The shortened days create natural boundaries that encourage early rest and leisurely rising. Rhythms that honor the season's invitation toward slower pace and deeper reflection. Each season's distinctive character contributes to the larger pattern that shapes years into meaningful progression. Cycles that provide structure without imposing urgency. Change that enriches rather than threatens the growing peace that makes. Each day feel like gift rather than burden to be endured until some distant goal finally grants permission for satisfaction. The understanding arrives not as sudden revelation, but as gradual recognition that builds through countless small moments when belonging feels complete rather than provisional. Frodo discovers that home means something far deeper than familiar surroundings or comfortable routines. Though both contribute to the growing sense of rootedness that anchors his healing in ways no medicine could achieve. Home proves to be the place where his presence serves purposes larger than individual comfort, where his story becomes part of a larger narrative that stretches back through generations and forward toward futures. He will help shape through simple daily choices. The cottage that shelters him carries within its walls the accumulated love of family members who chose this place for their own haven. Rooms blessed by years of honest laughter and genuine tears. Hearths that have warmed bodies and spirits through seasons of abundance and scarcity alike. Walking through chambers where Bilbo once entertained unexpected guests and planned impossible adventures. Frodo feels connection to heritage that extends far beyond blood relation, into shared understanding of what makes life worth protecting. The very stones beneath his feet speak of continuity that survived the recent troubles to offer foundation for whatever growth the future might bring. These floors have supported the weight of countless celebrations and sorrows, witnessed promises made and kept, hosted gatherings where wisdom passed from older voices to younger ears eager for guidance about navigating the complexities that mark every generation's particular challenges and opportunities. The garden that responds to his care carries within its soil the enrichment left by previous tenders who understood that cultivation requires patience, measured in seasons rather than days. Each plant that flourishes under his attention grows in earth, blessed by decades of thoughtful stewardship. Roots extending through layers of decomposed abundance that speak to cycles of death and renewal. Operating according to principles too fundamental for disruption by temporary chaos. His neighbors welcome him not as returning hero whose presence demands special recognition, but as community member whose absence left gap that simple return cannot entirely heal without conscious effort to rebuild relationships interrupted by circumstances beyond anyone's control. The conversations that flow across garden walls and during chance encounters on familiar paths gradually restore networks of mutual concern that make individual welfare inseparable from collective flourishing. The rhythms that govern his days align themselves with patterns established by countless generations, who found in these cycles the framework for meaningful existence. Rising with dawn because morning light brings energy for productive work. Eating when hunger arrives naturally rather than according to arbitrary schedule. Resting when fatigue suggests that restoration serves better than continued activity. These simple practices connect him to wisdom accumulated through centuries of people, learning how to live well within natural limitations. The peace that settles deeper into his spirit with each passing season carries recognition that healing requires not just absence of threat, but positive presence of all the elements that make existence feel worthwhile. Safety alone proves insufficient without beauty to inspire gratitude. Comfort means little without purpose to give structure to daily choices. Abundance lacks meaning without relationships that transform possession into sharing. The deep contentment that characterizes his best moments emerges from understanding that his journey beyond the borders of ordinary experience has returned him to appreciation for gifts that were always present but required contrast with their absence to reveal their true value. Home becomes not just destination, but recognition of grace that surrounds anyone willing to notice. How much love flows through ordinary places when peace allows such recognition to flourish. The evening ritual that concludes each blessed day begins as twilight settles over the Shire, like a gentle blanket drawn across the shoulders of a world preparing for rest. Frodo moves through his cottage with the unhurried contentment of someone whose time belongs entirely to himself. Each small task performed with attention that transforms routine into meditation. The lamps that he lights against gathering darkness create pools of warmth that speak to the simple luxury of choosing comfort over necessity. Tomorrow stretches ahead with promise that carries no weight of destiny or urgent obligation, simply the quiet gift of another day to fill with whatever brings satisfaction to a heart that has learned to find profound meaning in ordinary pleasures. The garden will require gentle attention as autumn deepens toward winter. Pages wait to receive more memories transformed into permanent record. Letters from friends promise updates about lives unfolding in peaceful directions, far from the shadow that once threatened everything worth preserving. The tea that steams in his favorite cup carries within its familiar warmth all the accumulated satisfaction of countless evenings when such simple comfort seemed beyond imagination. Each sip connects him to the growing certainty that happiness requires no grand achievement or dramatic accomplishment, only the wisdom to recognize abundance that surrounds anyone willing to notice how much grace flows through moments. When gratitude opens eyes to gifts that were always present. His pipe draws easily as he settles into the chair that has become perfectly shaped to welcome his evening rest. Tobacco burning with a steady glow that speaks to pleasure earned through patient cultivation rather than desperate seeking. The smoke that rises toward beams darkened by generations of similar fires carries with it all the peaceful intentions that mark the end of days well spent in service to purposes larger than individual desire, yet intimate, enough to touch every corner of existence with meaning. The book that waits beside his chair holds stories that will unfold at whatever pace his attention chooses to grant them. Adventures that require no physical courage or terrible sacrifice. Wisdom that emerges through contemplation rather than trial by fire. The words that will soon flow past his eyes speak to truths, discovered through careful observation of how love operates within ordinary circumstances. When fear no longer distorts perception of what actually matters. Sleep, when it comes, will arrive as natural conclusion to consciousness, well used rather than escape from unbearable burden or anxious anticipation. His bed waits upstairs, with blankets warmed by fires tended throughout the day. Pillows that will cradle thoughts freed from worry about tomorrow's demands or yesterday's regrets. Dreams, if they visit, will carry the gentle colors of healing rather than the harsh shadows that once made rest impossible. The deep quiet that settles over Bag End as night claims the surrounding countryside speaks to peace that extends far beyond individual healing toward universal restoration of right relationship between conscious beings and the creation that sustains them all. This is the gift that emerges from choosing to find meaning in small kindnesses, rather than grand gestures, satisfaction in tending what grows, rather than conquering what resists. Tonight, as you rest in the growing quiet, let yourself find peace in this understanding that the greatest adventures often lead, not toward distant treasure, but back to appreciation for grace that was always present, waiting for eyes cleared by trial to recognize how much love surrounds anyone willing to call ordinary places home. Sleep deeply, knowing that tomorrow's simple gifts are more precious than any treasure. That healing comes through accepting limitation rather than transcending it, and that the deepest peace flows through hearts grateful for the privilege of quiet days filled with small joys. Rest peacefully in the certainty that home means the place where your presence serves love's purposes, where ordinary moments carry the weight of blessing, and where sleep comes gently to spirits that have learnt to find infinite meaning in finite gifts.